hardest things about government, this is what I learned about government, is that there is a difference between ambitions and policies. You know, sometimes I sit with new leaders who come to power and I say, tell me about your policy agenda. And they'll list a whole lot of things. And I say to them, really, you know, those aren't policies, they're just ambitions. And what you learn about government is the toughest thing is to get anything done. And even though politics at one level is a very retail business, right? Politics, you're shaking hands and kissing babies and, you know, devising slogans and winning elections. When it gets to policy, it's a hard intellectual task. So when you ask the question, why is it we're not getting the financial flows to the developing world that we need? And it's not that the money isn't there for investment. We've got trillions of dollars, you know, there available for investment. It comes to some very hard questions. You've got to be able to guarantee an offtake because that investment's got to pay a return. You've got to have a utility in the developing country that's properly run. You've got to have a regulatory framework that gives a rate of return. You know, you've got to have the data available so that you know exactly what your energy demand is and how you can meet it. So there are a series of practical things. You've got to work out how, for example, the money that the World Bank and others have got for investment in clean energy, how that can attract and underwrite the risk of the private capital coming in to invest. These are the hard practical questions that we've got to start working on today. And the thing I find most frustrating about the climate debate is that it's a bit like, you know, John Kerry was talking about the original Kyoto Treaty, and I was in power when Kyoto came up and we signed the Kyoto Treaty. At that time, by the way, there wasn't a consensus internationally about acting on climate change. Many, many countries weren't part of that treaty. It was tough, I think, in fact, it failed to get through the Senate. So, and my government was the first to pass climate change legislation. So, what there needed to be was a huge movement to ring the alarm, to say to people, this is a big problem, we've got to deal with it. And that alarm was rung. If you fast forward to today, the problem today is not to keep ringing the alarm. The problem today is how do you build we know the house is on fire. Right? The question is, how do you get the fire trucks organized? How do you get them properly equipped? How do you train the firefighters? In other words, we've got to move from a campaign to a set of solutions. And that's the tough thing, because that requires hard intellectual work. And it also requires the international community to align its policy. So one really important aspect is global trade. Right? We need global trade to be as open as possible.